Good day. Welcome to the channel. A big thank you to the sponsors. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for commenting. Today we'll talk a little bit more about books. Polite way of describing it would be as a bibliophile. A little less polite, but probably even more accurate, would be as a book rat. You pick your choice. I will not get offended by either. So today we will talk about a few books that are better known to most of the public. And the first book that really that had outsized influence on my life, even if I did not understand it at the time, but now in retrospect, I can see it, would be Raphael Sabatini's Captain Blood. And we all know the story of Captain Blood, of course, a medical doctor who gets involved indirectly in the Monmouth uprising. For many, many years, I followed the Sabatini version of King James II. It took me actually to become a nautical archaeologist and historian to start seeing how wrong and incorrect that interpretation of James is. He was a brilliant administrator, a very dedicated sea officer, and actually a very capable admiral, plus an incredibly brave man as personality, as most of the stewards were. Anyway, it was Captain Blood that started my interest in 17th century seafaring. My first ship models, quote-unquote models, toys really, were my interpretation of the Arabella, Captain Blood's famous 40-gun ship. The first collections of books, and well, even John Franklin's book, I bought it because I hope that this may inform me of what a 40-gun frigate in this period may have looked like. Never mind that, of course, John Franklin's are all English, while Arabella was Spanish. That's all that I knew back then, funnily enough. But the point that I'm making is that this is what really started my interest in 17th century. So Captain Blood is on the top list of my all-time favorite books. I still periodically pull it off the shelf and reread it for pleasure and for rest. In the same group, I have, of course, the other two, the continuations of Peter Blood, which are more collections of separate stories rather than coherent novel type of book. I enjoy them also, but it is Captain Blood itself, his Odyssey, that I find most loving and lovable. Sabatini wrote quite a few naval books. The other equally well-known is The Seahawk, Sakharelbar, about an English nobleman from the 16th century who ends up becoming an Algerian corsair, and how he eventually returns to England and to Christianity. They were very popular when they were written in the 1920s and 30s. They were converted into films with Errol Flynn in the main role, mostly expressed in Errol Flynn hanging off one rope or another and rocking and rolling on it back and forth. Unfortunately, neither of the two films, in the very best traditions of Hollywood, neither of the two films has anything whatsoever to do with the books. They are quite entertaining as long as you change the names and consider them a completely different story. Black Swan is another of naval novels that Sabatini wrote. And although none of his writing makes any obvious nautical mistake in the characters, he is not really a seaman, he is not a sailor, so it is not the Patrick O'Brien model or even the Forrester novel model of naval fiction. It is more relatable to Dumas, perhaps. In the same category, there are two novels by the great Spanish writer Arturo Pérez Reverte. The one is part of the Captain of a Triste series, which Triste is a soldier in the Spanish armies of the 17th century during the 30 Years' War. But in one of the novels, he ends up as infantry serving on the galleys of Spain, patrolling and fighting the Islamic threat in the Eastern Mediterranean. Very entertaining book. Unfortunately, clearly it did not sell very well in English because they did not translate the entire Our Triste series. But essentially, Our Triste is for the Spanish army of the 17th century what Jack Aubrey is for the Royal Navy of the 19th century, what Richard Sharp is for the British Army in the Peninsula. Another book that he wrote, The Siege, at least part of the action also takes place on board ship, a sloop of privateersmen, and takes place during the siege of Cadiz during the Napoleonic Wars. Entertaining, good, well written, probably not in the mode of Forrester, O'Brien, etc. Then let us enter back into the real nautical, standard nautical fiction. Forrester and Captain Horatio Hornblower. There is the Gregory Peck film that is based on one of the novels, specifically The Happy Return. Then that novel was the first one to be written, and because it was successful, Forrester wrote the rest of the series of books. Forrester was the ultimate nautical fiction, especially a generation before me, which did not have Patrick O'Brien, still swears by Horatio Hornblower. He has become the byword of the field. Yes, excellent, very well researched, very accurate, socially, historically, nautically, you can't really fault it. I'm not a great fan of Horatio Hornblower himself. I can understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to create a hero who is not a hero. It makes no sense the way I'm saying it, but what I really mean by this is that he was trying to create a character who acts like a hero, who pretends, who does, while deep in himself he's driven by doubts in his abilities, in his knowledge, in his talent, even in his own bravery. So all the time he has this internal struggle trying to prove himself. He also famously or infamously, depending on your point of view, suffers from seasickness horribly. We all know that Horatio Nelson also suffered from seasickness. So, if anything, Hornblower is probably mostly influenced, he's hardly based on him, but he's influenced by Nelson in the fact that he is fairly small, slight man. He's not the 16+ stone Jack Aubrey who dominates with sheer physical presence. That's not Hornblower. He's not the best of swordsmen, he's not the best shot, he's not... He really is a grey, shadowy character. He, in no place in the novels does he jump forward. I never have the feeling, reading the Hornblower series, I never have the feeling that I really know him, that I can see him, that I can imagine him. He's not as lively as the O'Brien characters are. But nevertheless, this is a venerable and venerated series of books, series of nautical fiction. I strongly suspect that pretty much everyone who is watching this video at the moment is perfectly well acquainted with Hornblower. And yes, there was a mini-series even built. I have found them entertaining, not so much because they're a great film, but because they built a vessel specifically for the ships, for the series. It was built in Turkey, it still exists. It still sails apparently around Istanbul, though I haven't seen it there. And most of the models that participate in the films were constructed in Odessa and around Odessa in Ukraine. Eventually, that was apparently not a great success, so they were completed, the hulls were built there, but the rest was complete on time, and most of the filming ended up being done in England rather than in the pools around Odessa as the early stages of the filming began. So yes, by all means, entertaining, films worth watching. Will I see them again? Probably not. Well, maybe I will. Who knows? Anyway, yes, I do like the Hornblower and the Forester series. They're not my favorite, but they certainly are right up there with the best of the best. And after all, some may claim that he is the founder of the modern nautical naval fiction, and that probably is true. I will jump around now and present book, or rather a series of books that unfortunately stopped coming out. I love them because they were about the Royal Navy of the Restoration period. And this is infinitely more interesting than the Napoleonic period. Yes, I know that all of you are ready to slice my throat, flog me on the quarterdeck to death, and get me acquainted with the Cat o' Nine Tails. How dare I say such a thing, but it is true. Sorry, it is. In the 17th century, everything is much more dynamic. In all of these novels, the authors go through enormous trouble to try to come up with some convoluted way to present additional challenges to their captains, to drop them from their rank and position and power and ever upward development, to slowing down this benefit, these rewards that they are earning. Particularly happens to Aubrey in the series. We'll get back to this later. With the 17th century, you didn't have to. Just because you were commanding on second rate this season in this commission doesn't mean that next year you would. Next year you may be a lieutenant or even a volunteer extraordinaire, which is the original name for midshipman. Everything is being built. This is a dynamic period. People have these magnificent, extremely powerful weapons in their hands. They don't really know how to use them yet. They're only sort of feeling their way around it. This is a period of extremely dynamic people, characters, very interesting people, who start life as the foremost cavalry commanders and end life as the foremost naval officers and administrators. Obviously, I'm talking about Rupert of the Rhine, but it is not just he. He is just the quintessential bossableur, the quintessential cavalier, the swashbuckler, if you want, in a way. Though he certainly would not have seen himself in this way. But the period is dynamic. You can grow up, you can fall down, you can move. This is the period in which common master shipwrights are on regular access to the king himself, where the king himself is taking active participation in the building of his navy. And they're all competent and they all know what they're doing. This is what is so incredible of the century. This is just the spread, the scale of warfare in this period. These are the largest naval battles ever fought under sail. A couple of hundred ships slogging it out in the English Channel. The windows of London were shaking from the gunnery that was happening on the other side of the channel of the Dutch coast. What is there not to like? And virtually no one is writing about this period. So this is the period in which steps David Davis, to me, one of the top naval historians in the world. An incredible historian with vast amount of knowledge, currently the president of Nautical Research Society, which puts together the Mariner's Mirror, the foremost maritime historical journal in the world. It has been coming out. It is a brand new journal. It has been coming out for only, 113, 14 years now? Yeah, brand new, you know. So, David Davis wrote two, actually by now 3, absolute masterpieces historical. The one that is best known, that earned him the highest awards possible in our field, is the so-called Pepys's Navy. And it is, for the Restoration Navy, what the Wooden Woes by Roger is for the Georgian Navy. And what is Brian Lavery's Nelson's Navy for, obviously, the Napoleonic period, the Nelsonian Navy. It is an outstanding book. It is the Bible. And I'm not saying it only because the book on shipbuilding, 50% of the quotations are coming from my master's thesis. But that certainly has helped me enjoy it. Then there is his Gentlemen and Tarpaulins, his first of the books. And the most recent one is The Sea Kings, the Stuart Sea Kings. It is a biography of the involvement of the royal brothers, King Charles II and the future King James II, in the creation of the modern Navy. Maybe I should do a video about these historical books separately, because I can feel myself getting sidetracked and entering into that. But to me, these are the Bibles for anyone who is interested in this period. So I had very, 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 very high expectations and impatiently awaited the arrival of his fiction novels. And how would I rate them? Well, these are the first novels that he had written. Historically speaking, they are beyond any question. The social aspects, the land-based history, the naval history, the officer class is very accurately represented. You can't argue. I mean, this is the foremost historian of the period. How shall I describe the books? They apparently did not bring him quite the success that I think and I feel they deserved, because people were expecting and were looking for another Jack Aubrey. And his character is Matthew Quinton, is not Jack Aubrey. Matthew Quinton, if anything, the books owe more to Captain Blood, to Sabatini's characters, than they do to Jack Aubrey. So if you are in the market for something that is modernized style of writing, but be similar to Sabatini's novels, to Alexandre Dumas' Musketeers, this is it. These are the books for you. Much of the action happens on dry land. This annoys some people because Aubrey is at sea the whole time. But this would be ahistorical. Most restoration officers actually were at sea only during the campaigns. So I love them. I'm really sorry that he stopped writing them. His publishers twisted his arm into beginning a new series on, you guessed it, the Napoleonic period. And when I see another novel on the Napoleonic period, I want to scream, cry, roll on the floor, throw fits, etc. He tried in a post on his blog years ago, he had written that he really doesn't feel like writing Napoleonic period novels because everything that could be said is already being said. So he said, I didn't feel that I can contribute much. Well, in a way, he figured out how to contribute. His 3 novels, so far only 3 have come out, are from the point of view of the French. It is an aristocratic captain who has had the great misfortune of serving in the Russian Imperial Navy for a while. Even worse, the poor fellow had been married to a Russian woman. So these 2 things already would make you somewhere between suicidal and mass murderer. But somehow Philip manages to recover his humanity. Obviously, these are my comments rather than the author's comments. This is not what he puts in the books. But more seriously and to the point, the books are much more mature writing, mature novels than these are. I still have a warm spot for the Matthew Quinton series. He has written 1 more that allegedly is going to be a meeting between Quinton and Henry Morgan, the famous privateer. I can't wait for this one. The author told me that he's still considering publishing, although he may have to publish it as self-published book rather than going through a major publisher. I will definitely do a separate video on his historical books. The more I think about this idea, the more I like it. But, ladies and gentlemen, by all means, do give these a try. Are they the top of my list? No. But they're highly entertaining, and if he ever publishes another one of these, I'll definitely buy it. Admittedly, though I don't want to state this publicly, I will probably buy his, definitely buy his Napoleonic fiction too. With this has become what, part 3 of our series? I'll bring it to a close because this video already has become way too long. And I am challenging your patience. So thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your donations and your support for the channel. I'll do my best to answer questions. I hope some of these books are useful and you enjoy them as much as I have enjoyed most of them. Goodbye and see you soon.